If you genuinely believe that abortion is murder, you're not going to be content with murder being outlawed in Alabama and murder continuing in California. As soon as you get federal power, you will try to outlaw it at the federal level.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Abortion rights are workers' rights. And this is something that we haven't talked a lot about. But, frankly, I think that we need more white men talking about women's bodies, and so we're going to do that today. We don't have enough about that.
Wow.
I think that, I think that it's important that, proper voices be heard about this subject. No, but seriously, this is, we have the platform, and so we're going to use it. We're not going to use it for a terribly long time, but we do want to talk about it just shortly because this is so topical, and we will dive deeper into it in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be reaching out to Holler Health Justice. They are a West Virginia abortion fund and women's advocacy group in West Virginia. They are unionized with the industrial workers of the world. We'll be talking to one of those workers about this issue and how it affects workers in the coming weeks. But we wanted to just set our cards out on the table and say clearly that abortion rights are workers' rights. And because of the news that came out this week that we look to, which is not a surprise to anybody, or it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, that we are barreling towards a reversal of Roe versus Wade, that we are barreling towards a taking away of a constitutional right that women have had in this country for 50 years. And so saying abortion rights are workers' rights, that may not be something that's intuitive to everybody. And I know that there are some folks that, don't reckon that this is really in our wheelhouse. And I'm sure that there are even people in the House of Labor who are happy about the news from last week that will strip bodily autonomy from women, from working women and working folks across the country. I also know that if you're happy about this decision, even the best argument, even an objectively correct argument about the importance of bodily autonomy, about the tyranny of the state, and how you've got no business telling people that, there's nothing that I can say right now to convince you. And I'm aware of that. Because it's been beaten into your heads, if you believe this way, it's been beaten into your head for decades, likely, that for some reason, a fetus at the moment of conception has just as much worth as a human adult, and thus, and this likely derives, from some religious or spiritual belief. I'm not going to be able to deprogram a lifetime of religious indoctrination. I want to plant some seeds for you, though. I would encourage you, if you are anti-choice, if you are happy about this, and it comes from a religious belief, I would urge you to consider the fact that in the Old Testament, the punishment for murder was death. An eye for an eye, right? That was the punishment for murder. The punishment for an injury to a woman that resulted in a miscarriage is a fine. If there was a biblical basis for life beginning at conception, then the punishment for an injury resulting in a miscarriage would justly be death. But that is not the prescription that the Bible puts out. I would also encourage you to consider the fact that the Old Testament prescribes abortion. This is the thing that the Bible tells people to do in the Old Testament in the case that a woman commits adultery. If a woman commits adultery in the Old Testament, the prescription is to induce abortion. A retort to that is going to be that the Bible says that before you were in the womb, I knew you. And this is something that has never made sense to me, because all that is saying is that before you were a person, I knew you. There's another saying that says, something about like this happened before you were even a twinkle in your mother's eye. Does that mean that life begins at twinkle in an eye? No, it's an expression. It's an expression saying that this happened before you were a being, before you were formed, before you were a soul, if in a religious sense. Also consider the fact that for the first 100 years of this country, abortion was largely unregulated in all states until what they called a fetal quickening, which is very similar to to what Roe versus Wade put out, which is that abortion is unrestricted in the first trimester. Fetal quickening is just when a baby begins moving, when the fetus begins moving inside of the womb. That's what that was the history of this country at the founding, and for 100 years after it. Why do I want you to consider this, though? And look, I know that nothing that I've said has convinced you, but I do want you to think about it. I want you to think about it, and I want you to think about it hard, because overturning Roe versus Wade will, at first, leave the decision of abortion up to the states, although Republicans will certainly push for a national ban as soon as they get power. This whole states' rights is BS. They do not care about states' rights because obviously if you genuinely believe that abortion is murder, you're not going to be content with murder being outlawed in Alabama and murder continuing in California. As soon as you get federal power, you will try to outlaw it at the federal level. So let's not be coy. That's coming as soon as they can get there. But it's going to be first left up to the states, which will mean that folks in Alabama are going to be forced by the state to carry a pregnancy to term. That will mean that women will lose their lives. That will mean folks who have a baby in Alabama will lose their income. They'll have to go through all the physical issues that go along with pregnancy against their will. Against their will. Women will die. Women will be inflicted with serious injuries because Alabama has decided that it wants to use the power of the state to enforce the religious convictions of some of its citizens on all of its citizens. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. Alabama's abortion ban has no exceptions for rape or incest. That means folks in Alabama will be forced by the state to carry the pregnancy that is the result of rape to term. That is unacceptable. And now it's ironic that this is coming from the institution of the Supreme Court, which is a counter-majoritarian institution. A counter-majoritarian institution it means that it is supposed to be. Its purpose is that it is a bulwark against the will of the majority. The purpose of counter-majoritarian institutions is to protect us from, quote-unquote, the tyranny of the majority. And the majority of people in Alabama do believe that abortion should be illegal in all or most cases, unfortunately. So if the Supreme Court has any place at all, it would be to protect folks in Alabama from the tyranny of the majority who would have them forced by the state to carry out a pregnancy to term. To carry out what could be a life-threatening pregnancy to term. If counter-majoritarian institutions have any role at all, it is to do that. But, of course, the same people who are going to laud this also laud counter-majoritarian institutions, but that only applies to taxes for rich people. This issue is, of course, a workers' issue because workers and their families are going to be the ones affected. Kim Kelly points out in a recent op-ed for In These Times that the United States is already a brutal place to be pregnant and a merciless one in which to raise a child. It's an even worse place to be a pregnant worker. The minimum wage is far too low, the rent is too damn high, and whatever remnants of a social safety net that working people were able to secure in recent decades have since frayed to tatters. Parental and infant mortality rates are deplorable, especially in Alabama, and are especially high for black and indigenous folks. We are living through a public health crisis, a housing crisis, a climate crisis, an economic inequality crisis, and a political crisis. Bringing a child into this world should be a choice, not in order. Workers who are forced to surrender their bodies via judicial mandate and deliver unwanted babies are not being protected, are not being respected at work or as people. They are not free. The Association of Flight Attendants President Sarah Nelson said in a statement that not everybody will make the same choices, and that is fine. And AFA's members hold a wide range of personal beliefs on the topic of abortion. But the right for each of us to make our own choices about our jobs, our bodies, and our futures is fundamental. That includes the right to protect safe, legal options to anyone who wants to seek reproductive health care. As union members, we understand democracy in our workplaces and in our public square. Americans overwhelmingly, and this is true even if it's not the case in the state, Americans overwhelmingly support safe and legal abortion. This is not just a radical assault on our rights and settled law. It is an attack on the majority of this country and the ideals upon which it was founded. Unions still have power in this country, and we must use it to fight on this front of the class war that the ruling class has re-engaged. For its members, unions should immediately begin bargaining for abortion provisions in their health care plans, for travel allotments if they have to go out of state, cross state lines for abortion. And we should do this because the ideas that some religious folks, some, not all, the ideas that some religious people have in their heads should not dictate what workers do with their bodies, and they should not be allowed to force a worker to carry a pregnancy to term. It is none of their damn business. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.